I proclaim with all the power that is in me that the Inside Out podcast is the only true and living podcast on the face of the whole earth, with which I, Bruce Reginald McConkie, am well pleased, speaking under the podcast collectively as well as individually.
I got to get another thing in there. It was funny that it was Bruce Reginald McConkie, but I need a new joke. So don't be surprised, folks, if we have somebody else introducing the podcast at some other point. Hello and welcome. I am Jim Bennett. I am here with Ian Wilkes. Ian, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jim. How's things?
Things are good. Things are good. They're especially good. So we were talking about what we're going to talk about tonight. The news, it's been all over the news that the whole Epstein issue, Donald Trump was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein for 15 years. And then they had a falling out. But you can see videos of Donald Trump with convicted child rapist, sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, who killed himself in 2019. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but that's one of the conspiracies that I have time for, that I'm willing to entertain, the idea that Epstein did not kill himself. But anyway, when Donald Trump ran for office in 2024, he was asked, will you release the Epstein files? And he said, yeah, I would. Well, maybe that one less so. That's what he said, because there's a lot of fake stuff in that. And Pam Bondi, his attorney general, at one point said, I have all the Epstein files on my desk. I'm going to release them all. And then a couple of days later, it was, oops, there are no Epstein files. We're not going to release them. And Donald Trump said, it's all a hoax. It's all a Democrat hoax. And since then, the drumbeat has been release these files. And anybody who is anybody recognizes that Donald Trump is in these files. And in fact, his own Department of Justice told him he was in these files multiple times. Well, so we have this government shutdown. And right before that, there was a special election that elected a Democrat who was the last person needed to sign a petition that would bring a vote to release the Epstein files to the floor of the House of Representatives. And in an unprecedented move, the Speaker of the House refused to swear her in. And it was just an absolute nightmare. We've got Clayton here saying, good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Clayton. Thank you for joining us. A day after we said we were going to do a live stream. We appreciate your flexibility out there. Anyway, so all this bingo, bango, bongo. Today, the Democrats on the committee, and we have Deanne Sanchez saying hi to everybody. Hello, Deanne. The House Democrats released a number of emails that they received as a result of a subpoena that they gave to the Epstein estate. And in the emails, one of them talks about Donald Trump being the dog who didn't bark. Jeff Epstein says to Ghislaine Maxwell, who is serving a sentence that has been greatly reduced because Donald Trump is very happy that Ghislaine Maxwell has not thrown him under the bus. Yeah. And Guy McDude, I've been very distracted by the Epstein news today. No work has been done. Throw the whole bunch behind bars. Please. Yes, I agree. Can you see that one, Ian?
Yes.
Can you read that one for us?
Yeah, great to see you too. The Wi-Fi always eagerly await your podcast. Your recent live version is a wonderful way to feel more involved. Thank you very much.
Thanks, apostate of mind. We appreciate that. So anyway, this is all background. Probably everybody knows this. Why are we talking about it? Well, we're talking about it because I have garnered so much pushback from my fellow members of the church over my stance on Donald Trump. In fact, I kind of got in trouble with the Tabernacle Choir at one point because I was tweeting out, I was dreading the idea of the Tabernacle Choir having to go sing at a second inauguration. You know, they sang at the first inauguration. I was not a member of the choir back then. I was a writer for the Deseret News, and I wrote a big article saying that it was appropriate for them to sing at the choir, and I still believe sing for Donald Trump because they've sung for every president who has invited them, including Lyndon Johnson, who was the only Democrat who ever invited them. But I was just dreading it, and I ended up having a conversation with the president of the choir, who was the former governor of Utah, Mike Leavitt. He's also a close family friend. He spoke at my father's funeral. He was elected governor of Utah the same year my father was elected to the Senate, and so they were very close for their entire political careers. And I was very nervous when he said, "Would you like to talk about this?" And I thought, "Oh, I'm in big trouble." And I wasn't in big trouble. We had a nice, long, productive conversation that was very positive. But what I said to him, and what is still true, is that the whole Donald Trump thing has been this massive trial of my faith. Because we are the people who have the gift of the Holy Ghost. We are the ones who are told that by the power of the Holy Ghost, you may know the truth of all things. We talk about the gift of discernment. And 2/3 of us have thrown in with this guy. 2/3 of American Latter-day Saints voted for Donald Trump. And so many see loyalty to Trump as being synonymous with loyalty to the gospel. And I've been pegged as, okay, so Jim Bennett, the progmo, the progressive, the liberal, the lefty. This has nothing to do with politics in my mind. Nothing. It has to do with morality. It has to do with decency. Donald Trump, I mean, politically, ideologically, bears no resemblance to the Republican Party my father represented for 18 years. Donald Trump hates free markets. He hates free trade. He likes high taxes in the form of tariffs. I mean, that's not Reagan Republicanism. And I still believe all the things I believed when I was a Republican. I left the Republican Party when Donald Trump received the nomination. But to see, you know, Latter-day Saints throw in with this guy and say, okay, this is the way forward. To me, it's a measure of our decency, not a measure of our political acumen. It has nothing to do with policy. It has to do with the fact that this man is a terrible human being. He is a felon, convicted on 34 counts. He is an adjudicated sex offender. A jury found that he sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll in a New York department store. And everybody says, well, you can't call him a rapist because he wasn't convicted of rape. And my response is, yeah, you know why? Because the jury had all of these things they could choose from. And in order to be able to say it was rape, the jury would have had to have proved that E. Jean Carroll was penetrated by Donald Trump's penis and not his fingers. And it happened so quickly and was so violent, she didn't know. And so I'm thinking, this really is not a good look for you guys. And you're saying he's not a rapist because, I mean, and all these things that Donald Trump has done would have ended any other political career. And yet there is no bottom. There is no bar low enough for the Donald Trumps of the world. And there is no bar low enough for members of the church to throw him under. And now it's becoming very clear that Donald Trump is likely a pedophile. And I mean, is that not enough? Is that not a low enough bar that we're going to finally overthrow this guy? So that's where I think that connects here to the church, is that, you know, we are told in the Doctrine and Covenants that we are supposed to seek out good people, good and wise leaders. And Donald Trump does not meet that standard. And in fact, that language was included in the church's statements before elections, saying that we should seek out wise and good men or good leaders. They have allowed for, you know, women as well. But they've taken that out because they know that doesn't apply to Donald Trump, and they know that 2/3 of people, follow Donald Trump. So this is where I'm beginning. We've got a whole bunch of comments. Ian, do you want to read the comments and then sort of add your bit here?
Sure. Good day, Jim. Ian, a warm Thursday afternoon down here in paradise. I'm here because Guy mentioned you were on, Jim.
Oh.
Thank you, Peter. Hello, everyone, from Ben White. Hey, Ben. Amen from Jay Mandubs. Howdy, everyone. Joining a few minutes late, catching up. Jim, I've been busy with work and I haven't watched the news. Will the files be released now that the new Dem is sworn in?
Yes.
Yes.
But it takes a week. Well, so the House will vote on it.
Although the Senate could block it, potentially.
Yeah, but the thing about this is that now that there's an actual vote, hordes of Republicans are defecting. None of them are willing to say don't release it. They weren't willing to sign the petition, so they kind of had this political cover, but none of them can go back to their constituents and say I didn't want the Epstein files released. So the vote will take place within a week. I would be very surprised if it's not a veto-proof majority, and I think the same will likely happen in the Senate. But I could be wrong. Anyway, okay. Next comment here.
This is not Democrat versus Republicans. We are in a good war, in a war, good versus evil. They want us fighting amongst ourselves so they can implement one world order. Could have some truth in there. Jim, I just want to add to what you've said. I'll just read this one here. Mormon support for Donald Trump was an early bale of straw on my shelf back in 2016, says Guy McDude. Not the straw that brought the whole thing down, but not inconsequential weight, to be sure. So yeah. I want to be clear that Inside Out is not a political podcast. However, the church has a legal, moral, spiritual obligation to guide, influence politics in a positive way. Its position on morality is very clear in regards to its own institution and how the church calls and appoints people in leadership. We just had a new apostle. We can bet your bottom dollar that there's been extensive vetting and screening for months in terms of replacing an apostle. There's a lot of work, Jim, goes into replacing a bishop, a lot of prayer. There's a process that goes into that. There's also an extensive process for calling a stake presidency. I know I've been involved in, I think, 3 of those different experiences and escaped the first 2 and got caught on the last one. It's very thorough. There's a lot of vetting involved. I was interviewed by President Oakes for my calling. And the first question he asked, Jim, can you remember? I've shared it. Can you remember what he asked me?
Sure. Is there anything in your life that would be an embarrassment to the church?
Absolutely. That was the very first question. And I could understand where he was coming from. And so, the goal is to protect the institution, to protect the integrity of the institution. So the integrity of the church and the calling and appointing people is absolutely paramount to the church. And that's good. So we've argued often on Inside Out about the relationship, the moral obligation, the very important distant relationship between church and politics. We know the church is apolitical when it wants to be. We know it's being more political also when it's decided to become more political. But the church has an obligation to influence its members and to communicate to its members to vote for people with integrity and honesty and decency. And again, I want to be clear, this is not about Democrats and Republicans for me necessarily. It's not about in Canada like the Liberals and the Conservatives here in Canada, or even in the UK about Labour or Conservatives or the Lib Dems or the Reform Party that's looks like it's going to be taking over in the next few years, perhaps. It's about right and wrong. It's about doing the right thing. It's about honesty and integrity, transparency and accountability. I understand there is debate and argument around economics and policies and immigration, and those are very, very important conversations. The whole range of topics, job creation and social benefits, and the whole political program for governing a country. These are very important topics. You get different opinions from different parties, and you get maybe great ideas from the opposition, poor ideas from those in power, and vice versa. It's a complete mixture of different views. The point we're trying to highlight here, folks, is the importance and the value of having integrity and being honest and being open and being accountable. And members of the church that practice and believe in those fundamental principles, as President Hunter talked about when he was a prophet. Do you remember him when he was called? He was called for just a short period of time, Jim.
Yeah.
I was on my mission. I was right at the end of my mission. I was in Inverness, actually, and he was called as a prophet. And he talked about fundamental principles, getting back to the basics, about faith and repentance and Holy Ghost and baptism and all the basics, love and service and just doing the right thing. And it seems like the church can't or won't or lacks that. I call it intestinal fortitude, that grit, that moral grit to speak up and to say something. It's because it's afraid, sadly, to do that. So, and also Trump, you could call him Smith or Jones or Brown, right? Well, Trump is Trump. Trump is Trump. But you could have a Trump person like, the name of Brown. It's not about where I'm going with this. It's not about Democrat or Republican. It's about what we're saying about honesty. Now, Trump campaigned hard on the decision on releasing the Epstein files, complete transparency and accountability. He said that. I've got some of his quotes here, right? And now, when he's in power, he's backtracked that, and the FBI, under the direction of Trump, is refusing to release all of the information until today. However, it wasn't the FBI that released the information, Jim. It was the Epstein estate.
Right.
So you've got 26,000 or thereabouts emails that the estate's released. I can't understand why the FBI, which is surely governed on principles of integrity, I presume, or it should be, hasn't taken initiative and released that and shown disclosure, etc. But it's the Epstein estate that's done that. And I suspect the Epstein is going to release, I think they're saying that there's over 1 million emails that they are going to release potentially. But, for me, moral leadership is taking the initiative, doing the right thing, making the right decision, where mistakes have happened, being accountable, and being subject to due process and subject to the law. It seems like Trump and his administration, and you've got the same situation in the UK, by the way, it's not just Trump, and governments around the world. It's not just Trump administration, but you've got governments around the world, including here in Canada, certainly in the UK right now, which is an absolute mess, who are behaving as though they're beyond the law. The other thing that's really hit the headlines since we did the last podcast in the last couple of weeks is, and this is very significant on a global level, and it's certainly going to, it is directly related to the Epstein files, is this absolutely cataclysmic event that's happening with the British royal family, where Prince Andrew, formerly known as Prince, has had all of his titles removed, completely stripped, because he's been found by the a committee that works on behalf of the royal family. So it's an internal process that the royal family has instituted, and they've found, or they've basically said, they don't believe Prince Andrew's version of events based around the child sex and young girl sex trafficking activities that Andrew's been involved in. He's now a commoner. He doesn't have the title anymore. He's been completely stripped. His name is now Andrew Mountbatten -Windsor. They've added an hyphen for some reason, and they're completely and rightly so thrown him out. But they're expecting Prince Andrew or Andrew to be named or referenced significantly in these new email releases and in additional releases that's going to happen. But I think also a committee in the US has also called on Andrew Mountbatten to fly to the US and attend a congressional hearing to answer questions in regards to Epstein and what he knew and what was going on, and his relationship with Epstein and any relationship he had with Trump. So it's a complete cover-up. It's not just the Trump administration. What you've got powerful people in powerful, influential roles who've been involved in these situations with Epstein. Andrew, Trump, there's a few others as well. And you also had a senior British politician that was named in some of the emails a month ago, and he was forced to resign, by the way. I can't remember his name. He was a complete weasel, frankly. And so it's an absolute disgrace and cover-up. And there's people in there, Jim, in those emails, I'm sure, allegedly, who are named in them, who don't want those files to be released, and Trump being one of them. I don't think this is going to go away. It's going to be complete. I think we're going to get all the files, and it's going to be. I hope they're not redacted too much. I get there's some sensitivities in there, but I hope there's as much detail as they can get. And I hope, unlike the British government and unlike the royal family in the UK, I hope the Americans and MAGA, the MAGA movement, hold Trump to account. Now, I'm reading, if the reports are correct, that the MAGA movement group is prepared to push Trump pretty hard and hold him accountable if indeed Trump is found to have broken the law or in breach of the law from any disclosure from the emails. But just in summary, all we ask for, all we demand is leaders of our country, politicians, to act with honesty and integrity, and for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to say something about it, to stand up, to speak up, to have a position on it, and to at least, if not to the world, if it's not the church for the world, at least to communicate to its members direction and guidance and communication that is honest and that influences the members to do the right thing, and for members to get involved in local politics, to influence local policy, to do the right thing. So, members have an obligation. It's not just the church leadership. The members are on the hook, Jim. It's not just the leadership here. Just like the American people are on the hook who voted for Trump. Can't get off the hook unless Trump is not there or is re-elected. The American people are on the hook who voted for him. And the leaders of the Mormon Church the members of the Church of Jesus Christ, that is, are on the hook because we can't circumvent our personal obligation for doing the right thing and influencing politics and influencing, local government. As individuals, we have a spiritual and personal obligation and responsibility to get involved and to do the right thing and to speak up, because politics, whether we like it or not, it permeates every aspect of our lives, every level. It has profound impact. You just had a government shutdown for a month or so, isn't it? 6 weeks?
Yeah, 6 weeks.
I think they've removed that. I think Trump has signed this back to government initiative just a few hours ago. So you're now back in government. But that decision, rightly or wrong, has had a profound impact on so many people's lives. Politics affects every aspect of our lives, whether you're religious or not. And as members of the church with those fundamental principles, we have a sacred responsibility to get involved and to influence them for the right thing. And sitting around and doing nothing, and everybody's free to do what they want to do. I'm not telling people what to do. But if we want things to change and improve, we have to get involved, and the church has to get involved, and the members have to do their bit.
No, I think that's exactly right. We're getting a whole lot of comments about all of these. I think everybody that's here is sort of in agreement with us. We have Guy McDude saying howdy to Deanne and the Mighty Jor. Deanne says, I'm very disappointed that he continues to cover for pedophiles. Jim, there is no gift of discernment when people are brainwashed by Jesse Waters, Tucker Carlson, etc. I used to watch O'Reilly and Hannity and Colmes. Fox News is crazy town now. When my father died, I was interviewed by Alan Colmes because I told that story about Dad turning to us in the hospital and saying, I want to apologize on behalf of the Republican Party for Donald Trump. And I had a lengthy conversation with Alan Colmes that I would love to find. I hadn't thought about that for years, but he was very, very thoughtful. Peter Higgs, the Down Under representing. Yes, mate, for sure, says Peter Higgs. This should have been a number one priority when he took office, holding these people accountable. And Dan Sanchez says, hi to Guy. American politics is a source of entertainment for Aussies. Unfortunately, the outcomes are not entirely laughable. So much of online LDS discourse and content creation is essentially cultural political wars clothed in gospel language. If you ask me, modern Mormonism is very intertwined with politics. That's very, very true. Jim, you're on the right track. Hold your ground. It's really important that we speak our truth. Thank you, Deanne. Mormonism was built on political theocratic conquest. Politics and Mormonism are inseparable. Ezra Taft Benson was the prophet and basically said liberal socialism, communism is evil. Join the John Birch Society. Jim, why should we be surprised that many members are hard right? Ezra Taft Benson did not push the John Birch Society when he became president of the church. The behind the scenes stuff on Ezra Taft Benson is really fascinating because so many apostles disagreed with them. And my grandfather, who was the son of David O. McKay, my grandfather Lawrence McKay, his name was actually David Lawrence McKay, but he went by Lawrence, just hated the John Birch Society and was constantly talking to his father about reining in then Elder Benson. And by the time President Benson became president of the church, he had sort of backed off a lot of that. But a lot of that, I think, also had to do with the fact that he had sort of lapsed into dementia by that point. It's blatantly obvious people will vote for whichever team can do the most for them. Mormons are no different. What do you think about our support for Israel? Ian, you want to cover that one? Do we want to go there?
My goodness, that's a great question, a difficult one. I've been following that quite a bit, and I have some opinions on that. By the way, I think Trump issued a letter today to the Prime Minister of Israel, requesting that the government of Israel
pardon Netanyahu,
for some allegations around fraud. I don't. There's a whole conversation around that because you could argue that Israel's military campaign has been, from their perspective, perhaps successful. Many of the hostages have been released, but the cost, of course, has been absolutely extraordinary. I mean, that's a big conversation and it's complex, but we should maybe look at that another time. It's a great question, though, for sure. It's mixed. I think it's mixed.
Yeah. Well, so I'm just going through all of these comments. I don't know what We Are the People is, Deanne Sanchez, but I'll take your word that it's interesting. Totally in agreement with you as usual. Steve and Sally, thank you so much for discussing another vital topic. Was your dad really close with Orrin Hatch? Your dad and him kind of took different roads with Trump. Dad and Orrin Hatch were very close. In fact, when Dad had his stroke, Orrin Hatch was the president pro tem of the Senate and traveled with security. He had like full-time security and a driver because he was fourth in line for the presidency. If the vice president were to have died, the president, the vice president, and the Speaker of the House died, Orrin Hatch would have been president. And he was really, really excited about that. And Dad, I remember, it was actually quite sad. After he'd had his stroke, he could barely sit up and he was debilitated. But then Orrin said he wanted to come visit him. And Dad said, can you help me sit up in the garden so I can talk to Orrin Hatch and I can make sure I don't look weak? And we sat him up and Orrin came and they talked in the garden and Dad looked very, very weak. But I just thought that was just such a strange request. I remember that. But Dad and Orrin were good friends. And yes, they did very much depart when it came to Donald Trump, although Dad died before Trump was elected. So we didn't see how far down the Trump rabbit hole Orrin went. Dad and Orrin were very good friends when Orrin in the year 2000, ran for president. very few people remember that because he came in ninth place when there were only 8 candidates. I mean, he was just way at the bottom. And Orrin went and prayed in the temple and was talking to Dad about, I'm trying to get an answer. Should I run for president? And I just can't get anything. There's just nothing there. And Dad says, well, yeah, Orrin, that's called a stupor of thought. And then he finally, I remember Dad talking to, I can't remember what Orrin Hatch's wife's name was. I'm not even sure if she's still alive. But talking to her and saying, what do you think of this? And she says, I feel like I've been thrust down to hell. This is the most miserable I've ever been. And Dad would say, well, geez, what does your wife think, Orrin? And he said, oh, she's coming around. And Orrin decided, yeah, I'm supposed to run for president. And I remember saying to Dad, well, if he believes that, then the question you have to ask is, why does God want to humiliate Orrin Hatch? Because that's the only thing that happened when he ran. Have you ever seen it close to you change their mind about Trump since he took office? Yeah, I don't know. I don't really think so. I mean, changing their mind one way or the other. I mean, I haven't. There have been a lot of people that sort of reluctantly voted for Trump who got very enthusiastic for Trump when he was put in, but I can't think of anybody that's really changed their mind on him. So the other thing that, the link to the church here is President Oaks is now arguably the most politically savvy president of the church we've had in a very, very long time. He's a constitutional scholar. He gave a talk in the Tabernacle about the United States Constitution. He gave a talk in conference just a couple of years ago about the United States Constitution. And he spoke about the importance of making sure that we don't judge other people as a result of what their politics are. I'm going to try to pull that up here. This is the Salt Lake Tribune article. I'm going to use our exciting screen sharing idea. So bear with me as I press the right buttons. There, can you see that? No, you can't. Can you see that? There it is.
Yes, something's happening. Okay, great.
Yeah, so President Oaks gave a talk where he talked about, here it is, we should never assert that a faithful Latter-day Saint cannot belong to a particular party or vote for a particular candidate. There are many political issues, and no party, platform, or individual candidate can satisfy all personal preferences. Now, I very clearly read that as a license for Latter-day Saints to vote Democrat. But at the same time, since I've been so vocal about my opposition to Trump, that's been thrown back in my face again and again and again. Because one of the things I did right after Trump was elected there was a meme, and it was a picture of a bunch of Nazis, and somebody posted, "This is what I feel like when I walk into Elders Quorum," and all I said was "same." And I've had people say, "You're calling all Trump supporters Nazis." And to some degree, yes, I am. I think Trump is an authoritarian. I think Trump is a fascist. And I think to some degree, people who voted for Donald Trump voted for fascism. Whether they understood that's what they were doing or not, that's what they were doing. But that's thrown back in my face is you're going against what President Oaks is saying. And the only way I can respond to that is to say, I see this as my problem. I see this as, how do I reconcile with the fact that I look at people who I firmly believe voted for fascism? How do I accept them as Latter-day Saints? How do I accept them as fellow brothers in Christ? It is my problem. It is not their problem. I think there are other problems. But if the counsel from President Oaks is you should not have any political opinions, then I see that as problematic. But, so I don't think that's what the council is. BJ Taylor says that he has seen a few people change their mind about Trump. Say a little more, BJ, if you'd like. I know people that were avid maggots who are silent now. Ouch, Jim, that's harsh. Yes, Clayton, that's very, very true. So where this inevitably goes, I think, is into a discussion about abortion. Because when you push and shove why you have to vote Republican as a Latter-day Saint, it always comes back to, I cannot vote for somebody who is not pro-life. And we've talked about this extensively. And what people don't realize is that making abortion illegal and preventing abortion are not the same thing. And in fact, they're very often different things. The Mexico City policy or the global gag rule that every Republican since Ronald Reagan has enacted increases overseas abortion by 40%, because when you make abortion illegal and you won't even talk about it, you also cut into other kinds of women's health care so that you make contraception more difficult, you reduce educational resources, and so you have more unwanted pregnancies and more abortions. The way you get rid of abortion is you make it unnecessary, not make it illegal. And in fact, so many Republican Mormons don't realize that most people consider the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, at least most evangelical Christians, consider us to be a pro-choice church because we allow for exceptions in cases of rape, incest, and the health of the mother, not just the life of the mother. Most of these abortion laws that have been passed allow for a life of the mother exception. But that means that a woman has to be on death's door before they will provide her with an abortion, rather than just any kind of threat to their health. So anyway, this is the huge challenge. I don't think you can separate the two. I mean, has your political stance changed since you have left the church, or has your perspective on politics changed as a result of your time outside of the church?
That's a great question. That's never been asked. I've never been asked that question before. I just want to touch back on Elder Oakes's comment there from the tribunal. I interpret that as taking a stance or position on specific issues. So if you've got, no one party is perfect. You've got, like in the UK, Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dems, etc. Each one has got some qualities. Each one have got some failings, and I think we have to take a position on be issue specific or policy specific. And then to your question, yes, I see the world differently now since I've left the church. I see the church differently. I see the church's role in the world quite differently. I see the members' relationship with politics very differently. Being on the inside and being with, my friends, Jim, in the UK, here in Canada, in the US, were, and this is my perspective, my experience, my interpretation of these friends and church colleagues, if you like. They were more right, center right, more Republican conservative. That's pretty much the position of the church unofficially, in my opinion, doctrine and policy wise, right? So, you've got the middle. I think the church is somewhere, not extreme right, I don't think, but somewhere in the middle right there. And that was the thinking and the voting pattern of friends that would share their political views with me. And I was in that same kind of mix. And so I saw politics through the prism of being an active member of the church and being surrounded by, those kind of thoughts and people. Now I see it differently, and I see it, I've got a position to some extent on specific policies or specific issues. And I see politics as a whole mostly, as my perspective, my interpretation, as being untrustworthy, sadly. Politics is, I've lost confidence, Jim, in the political process, frankly, just in general. These institutions, it's not just the political parties, but it's the institutions and the mechanisms and the operations and the people behind the people that get elected. The judiciary, the legal community, the other communities that's supposed to stand up and do what is right. They are failing. The institutions are failing to some extent. Because how do these people even get elected? It's just extraordinary. And obviously get elected through democratic elections in those countries that have them. But that political process and experience, for me at least, has diminished. I don't have confidence in the system or in the process. The low voter turnout, for example, in the UK is very high. People have lost complete confidence in the British political system. They have. UK is an absolute disaster politically. You've got this new Reform Party, which is Nigel Farage, who's a close personal ally and friend of your president, Donald Trump, by the way, very close, right?
Lovely.
And the Brits are going to be voting for him. I'm not saying if Farage is anything like Trump, but the two are pretty close. And some of the policies that the Reform Party have, I agree with, but the whole political experience is just it's just in desperate need of a complete overhaul and restructuring, reorganization. I think it's failing people. I just don't have confidence, even in the Canadian system. It's so corrupt. And Trudeau was an absolute disaster. He broke the law. There was a committee that found him guilty. The RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, were complicit in withholding information. They wouldn't even prosecute a sitting prime minister and withheld information. It's corrupt. It's not just in the United States. It's everywhere around the world. And so I have very little confidence in the political system. It doesn't mean that I don't vote or not try to vote for the right people. But I just, with all the intelligent people in the world, in the United States, here in Canada, UK, we've got some smart people. We seem to be unable, and I just can't figure this out. We seem to be unable to encourage or put people in a position, good people with intelligence, honesty, few skeletons in the cupboard. I mean, everybody's got them, I guess, but nothing. Can't we find someone out there that's decent, that is intelligent, that's got good morals, that is smart economically, is professional, has integrity, is honest, really clever, and really smart, and elect them into power? Is it so difficult to find that caliber of individual? And then to put, elect them, and then to support them when they're doing the right thing. So I think there's so many people out there, including myself, that has lost so much confidence and trust in the geopolitics, the politics of Canada. It's so corrupt here, and especially I think in the UK as well. I see that happening in the US. You can see it closer than I can, and for me, it's a policy issue specific thing. Is there any one party that ticks all the boxes? No. And I just, the church says vote for the person that represents the best morals and the best qualities. Where are they? Where are these people? I just, if you're out there and you can, Mitt Romney is somebody I could get behind, right? I really could. I don't necessarily agree with everything he said, but if there's anyone that I could get behind, it would be Mitt Romney. I think overall he's a decent fella. I think he stood up to Trump, and I think he would have made a pretty good president. Would he have the grit? Well, we don't know. He didn't. He wasn't elected. But people like that, I think, could help restore so much confidence that so many people have gone. I'd be really interested to know if our listeners where their position is on Mitt Romney. Would you vote for Mitt Romney if he ran again? I'm not an American, but I would. I think he's not perfect, but perhaps one of the best people out there in terms of integrity and intelligence.
Look, but for me, it's not even about ideology at this point. I don't think with Trump in office, I don't think we have the luxury of talking about ideology. I mean, he is so far beyond the bounds of what is acceptable in terms of, one of the things. It's the whole thing of P.J. O'Rourke, the writer who said he endorsed Hillary Clinton because she's going to be absolutely wrong about absolutely everything, but absolutely wrong about absolutely everything within normal parameters. When Joe Biden was elected, it wasn't that I was this huge Biden fan and rah Biden. It was Biden is normal. And there are people who talk about, well, if Trump were to die, then we'd have J.D. Vance. And won't J.D. Vance be awful? And my answer is, yeah, he'll be awful. He'll be awful within normal parameters. He won't be a lunatic who completely rewrites reality. Donald Trump is being grilled by the press over the fact that inflation has gone up, tariffs have gone up, taxes are going up, affordability is going down, housing prices are going up. Just all the things that the people voted for him to fix are getting worse. And Trump's reaction is, they're not. They're not getting worse. This is the best economy we've ever had. And he stood up and he said, I have a 92% approval rating. He has a 36% approval rating. Where the frick does he pull 92%? He just makes things up. He just makes up a reality. And he lives in a reality where the 2020 election was stolen. And he tried to overthrow the government in a violent riot. And now that's okay. I mean, he suffered no consequences. Everybody involved in that has been pardoned. The fact that 5 people died doesn't seem to matter. I mean, this is not normal. This is not acceptable. This is not, gee, should the minimum wage be this or this? It's, do we have the decency to confront reality? I do not share a common set of facts with Trump supporters. You sit and talk to them and they just say things that are just factually it's the conversation we had. I don't want to mention his name, but
I remember. I know you're talking about.
You know exactly who I'm talking about. We had a conversation with a guy who refused to agree that the sky was blue. I eventually said, well, is the sky blue? Can we agree on that? Oh, Jim, I'm not going to. And this is a guy who insisted.
You walked out, I think.
I walked out. It's the only time I've ever walked out.
We couldn't even agree if the sky was blue. Right?
He wouldn't. Well, he wouldn't agree that the church ever discriminated on the basis of race. Just said no, we never did. And it's like, well, look at what Brigham Young said. Oh, I'm not gonna. No, he didn't say that. I mean, it's like Trump has given people a license to reject reality if they don't like it. To just say the world is not, the sky is green. If I want the sky to be green, you have to respect my opinion. It's like you are not entitled to your own facts. You're entitled to opinions about those facts. But Donald Trump lives in an alternate reality and talks about things and just lies with such impunity and doubles down on the lie when he's called on it. I remember very, very early on, Donald Trump's administration, he talked about after 9/11, seeing the TV broadcast where all of these Muslims were dancing on top of buildings in New Jersey to celebrate. And he just insisted that he'd seen that and that was so disgusting to him. And they reviewed every single broadcast of everything that happened after 9/11 and said there is absolutely no broadcast anywhere where that happened. There was absolutely no indication of that ever happening. And Donald Trump just insisted, no, they did. They doubled down. I mean, just this last week, he was talking about after the Democrats won their election, he says, well, this Democratic congresswoman was on there talking about how important it is to have men playing in women's sports, all these transgender men, and that was the most important thing to her. And the interviewer said, which congresswoman? was saying that. Oh, you can go look it up. There wasn't one. He made it up. He just makes things up, and you just have to sort of roll. It's just so bizarre.
Two thoughts. So we probably should. Oh, go ahead. You're going to read some of the.
Well, do you want to hear? You can read the comments as I've.
From Guy McDood. Clayton, history will support Jim's viewpoint. This is my prophecy. Yep.
I hope so, Guy.
Mostly old school Republicans who voted for Trump at the beginning, but then seeing the direction of the party after he took over, they felt like they couldn't vote for him anymore. Yep.
I haven't really seen that. I mean, you see that with a handful of decent people. You see that with Liz Cheney. You see that with Mitt Romney. When I spoke to Mitt Romney in Peru and talked to Ann Romney, she's like, Donald Trump is King Noah. Why can't people see that? He's wicked King Noah.
You'll find out in the midterms next November. We've got the midterm elections, local elections as they call them. That's the devolved parliaments, by the way, in UK, Scotland, Ireland, Wales. UK is an absolute mess on every level. And there'll be an indication of the British government, how it's doing in the May elections. You've got the midterms coming November. Two quick thoughts, and we'll come back to the comments here. As a question, where is the organizations and the institutions in the United States to hold the Trump administration to account? That's the first point. The second point as well is that those people calling the Trump administration, any other politician, by this, not just Trump, any other politician, the obligation we have to call them to account. We have to make sure that we are also doing the right thing as an organization, as individuals, that we are behaving responsibly and with integrity. And the reason why I mention that is that Trump has been claiming that all the media that doesn't support him are involved in a smear campaign. The Epstein files is a smear campaign against him. And he also talks about fake news media. And I get it, because the sad truth is there is a reality to that, Jim. So I'll give an example real quick. The BBC deliberately spliced and edited material from the January 6th speech, deliberately. No question about this. And they cut out, they put, quoted him at this point, 54 minutes later, they quoted him later, and they put the two pieces together, and they edited it, and the message is completely different. That's the BBC, supposed to be an organization with high integrity. They've now admitted the mistake. Trump's suing them for $1 billion, by the way. And so where I'm going with this is that when we don't behave properly, and we call, it's like you don't throw stones at greenhouses. Is that right? Is that the quote? What is it? What's that?
People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
That's it. Right. So, make sure your own house is in order. If you're a business, an organization, if you're a media organization, make sure you're being honest. You're reporting honesty and integrity, because that gives fuel to any, not just Trump, but any other political individual or politician who argue that the media is completely and entirely corrupt. I don't believe it is. You need a good media, Jim. You need good, honest journalism, good reporting, a professional organization that reports accurately and honestly and in a balanced way. We need that in a true democracy, to hold people to account. When they don't behave like that, like the BBC, then it gives fuel to people like Trump. We've probably got a whole bunch of comments on that's coming up. I think I can see some comments.
Yeah. So let's we haven't talked about this tonight. The idea of admitting to fallibility, solution to most of the problems, and also the death knell of Mormonism is a serious Orthodox religion. I don't think that is true. I think that there are a lot of people who fear that is true, particularly in high levels of leadership, which is why we don't embrace fallibility. But I think short term, there would be a lot of pain and a lot of frustration, but long term, it would make us far more serious. It would make us far more credible if we were able to admit to our mistakes. But that's a whole other discussion. You want to read some of these?
Sure. All we have to do is look at what he said during the campaign and what he's doing now. Yeah. I do appreciate the border being safer, but now it's time to go after the pedos. Yeah. yeah, if you broke the law and you've done stuff like that, you should be held to account, and not, you're not above the law. And stop finding other countries. There are
She
plenty
meant funding. She puts
funding other countries. There are plenty of our own citizens who need help. America, great against. I'm not seeing it, sadly. I understand why countries need, this globalization thing, right? I'm involved in international business, and I speak with friends and family and business colleagues, and for many, the globalization thing just not worked, Jim. This concept that we're going to improve the world through global trade and investment with China, Russia. In my opinion, that's succeeded 50%. There's a big failure component to that. It's not succeeded. And the guy in the street, the little guy in the street in the US, here in Canada, UK, etc., feels pretty much left out about what's been going on. And so there's a sense of, if we put our own interests first and protect our jobs and wealth and think, inwardly, then we're going to be better off. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. That we trade internationally, we do business internationally. We should be very strategic and selective in terms of how we trade and who we trade with. We should influence people's behavior through trade, absolutely, doing the right thing. We're all the global economy is so interconnected, but we should be using that network and that interconnection for good things, doing the right thing. You can't be completely isolated. And the reason I think why you're experiencing the economic woes in the US, or beginning to see them, is because of the international geopolitical and trade instability that's going on through the politics. I mean, this is a whole conversation around economics. So I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. International trade, yes, doing some stuff at home to support your own population, etc. It's a big conversation. We're not going to fix it on this call. But again, there's a church obligation here to get involved in the economics of the member, the well-being of the member. There's a temporal program in the church, Jim, right? Feeding helping the needy, helping underemployed members, people who are unemployed members. There's a whole economic initiative that exists in the church through the employment program, the church welfare program, and these are all based on what I think are very, very solid and very sound principles. Free enterprise, getting up and getting out and getting a job, working hard, advancing your education, being the best that you can at your job, increase your earning power, paying your taxes, contributing to society. I know that's difficult to do when the economics are very challenging, very constrained. But even in those difficult times, I think there's things that we can do, economically to improve our situation. I know there are some that can't, and that's why we have programs to help people. Now, I'm a big fan of not too much government intervention and not too little, somewhere in the middle. Those people who are vulnerable and excluded, disadvantaged, they need help. Absolutely, they need help, and we need to be there as a society, community to help them. Also, you don't want to get too involved in people's lives, too many regulations and too much oversight. We need to be, again, this is my view, be self-enterprising and leading our own lives and shaping our own lives and having not too much interference. So, again, it's a balance. UK has got too involved in people's lives. And where do you think the US government is in its regulation and intervention and oversight in the American people's lives, Jim? Is it too much or too little, or where is it?
I don't think at this point we have a coherent sense of what it is, because Donald Trump isn't bound to principle, isn't bound to any sort of ideological theory. And so Republicans used to be all about free trade and were hardcore free traders until they absolutely weren't. And one of the things that Donald Trump lost his crap over was that you guys up in Canada, some group up in Canada, ran an ad
Yes.
that showed Ronald Reagan's opinion on tariffs, which was entirely legitimate and entirely correct. At first, he said it was AI, and then it was. Ronald Reagan was absolutely a free trader. I am absolutely a free trader. I'm very much. Frederick Bastiat was this 19th century French economist who said, when goods don't cross borders, soldiers will. The idea that countries that trade with each other are far less likely to go to war with each other. I don't know how you shut down trade in a global economy that is linked by an internet where I can talk to somebody on the other side of the planet in real time whenever I want to. I mean, the world has become smaller. I just don't see any possible way that globalism goes away. So but again, all of these things are sort of ideological discussions that can take place when you have a functional government and a functional democracy, and we have a lunatic that has no connection to any of those things, and just whatever he had for breakfast determines whatever his policies are. I mean, this is Medic design. Trump has no real ideology. He is just a chaotic mess. He flies by the seat of his pants. Look at his 50-year mortgage idea. Just stupidity. Yeah, it's absolutely asinine. And it's certainly not Republican, or at least not conservative in any way that I recognize conservatism for my entire life. I mean, it just doesn't exist anymore. I mean, a lot of comments here. This is a little bit of a change of pace, but I do want to address this. Just came from Jonah Barnes making up his own fact about Adam God not being a defunct doctrine, but an invention of anti-Mormons. So this is an appropriate discussion. Do you know who Jonah Barnes is, Ian?
I've heard the name briefly. Yeah.
So are you familiar with Ward Radio and Carden Ellis? Okay. You are a babe in the woods.
I am.
When it comes to the Mormon podcasting world. You have not seen all of the garbage that's out there. I have gone on Ward Radio multiple times. They flew me down to Los Angeles. Carden Ellis is the host. He's a very talented guy. I consider him a friend, and he was very much on the right side of the whole Aaron Sherinian debate. But Jonah Barnes, who I have never met, is also a regular on there, and he is making the rounds now saying that Adam God, I've been watching this. I have not watched their full episode because it's just painful. But he's making the rounds. These guys, first of all, are all very Trumpy. And I stayed up till 2 a.m. in Los Angeles with Carden and his minions sort of yelling at me about how wrong I was to not support Donald Trump. And that was exhausting. But they're very Trumpy. They're very Republican. And they're very much making up their own facts. And the idea is that Adam, when Brigham Young was talking about Adam God, he was using Adam as a title, not as the name of a person, and goes into this big convoluted kind of just manipulation of language to try to pretend that Brigham Young didn't say Adam was God. And Brigham Young absolutely said Adam was God and ran into all kinds of opposition from the Quorum of the 12, who were furious with him for saying Adam was God. And so Brigham Young demanded it be taught at the veil of the temple at the end of every endowment session so that people knew that they couldn't get away with not knowing Adam was God. I mean, this was something he taught for 20 years. And the apostles kept pushing back on him. And when Brigham Young died, his weird hobby horse on this died with him. And since then, Spencer Kimball has had to come out and say, we disavow this false doctrine. Now, he never mentions who was perpetrating the false doctrine, which was Brigham Young. But this is a reality that we have to accept. We have to figure out, can you continue to have faith in a church where the president of the church was so fundamentally wrong about the nature of God? And I think it actually, if you look at it and you look at the entire history of how the church sort of made sure that didn't infect our theology long term, I think it demonstrated actually how the sort of checks and balances and redundancies within the church work and are helpful. I think that it's the whole idea of fallibility and the whole idea that we accomplish great things in spite of our weaknesses, not because we don't have them. But anyway, you see this very much. Trump, I draw a straight line to the idea of, okay, inventing your own reality whether you're talking about politics or you're talking about Adam God and the church. Trump has given license to members of the church for so many things that they would not have otherwise felt comfortable saying or doing. He has given license to us to be cruel. He's given license to us to treat immigrants like garbage. He's given license to us to be vulgar, to be just all the things that he is. And he's given license to us to say, well, geez, I believe something completely bonkers, and you have to respect my belief as being as valid as reality. And so I don't think that's a full tangent there. I draw a straight line to the fact that members of the church now feel comfortable inventing facts in order to bolster their own position, whether or not it's reconcilable with reality. So I just got a text from Cardin Ellis. I don't know if he's watching me. It doesn't have to do with what we're talking about. So anyway, all right. So I think we should wind up here.
Yeah, we're over time, but yeah. Any other comments that we want to read out before we close?
There's just a whole bunch. I'm Mr. Moderate. Give me John McCain, Kristen Sinema, Joe Manchin, Mitt Romney, Amy Klobuchar, people who actually move the needle, not a bunch of partisan hacks. Off topic a bit, like to hear Guy McDude and Deanne Sanchez Faith Journey Story on Inside Out podcast that wanted to come on. We'd love to have both of you. I think that would be fun. True and undefiled religion, visiting the fatherless and widows, feeding the hungry and clothing the naked. I'd be willing to give outline to see if it's on brand for Ian and Jim. I may not be the best interviewee as I tend to freeze when speaking publicly due to general anxiety disorder. Okay, well, we can talk about this offline, Guy McDude. All right. So yeah, the rest of these comments are talking about people coming on to the podcast and that sort of thing. We are so grateful for your participation. You guys are wonderful. These discussions are very helpful. I know they're helpful to me. And Ian, I assume they are helpful to you. Yeah. And so we just so appreciate you engaging with us and having this discussion, because I think it helps all of us. If we can talk about these things, we can give a voice to these things. I think that that's a great way to go forward. Ian, your summation.
Listening to you, Jim, and reading the comments, which I'm so grateful for, to all of our listeners. Each of your opinions so valuable, so important. I'm reminded of a question that President Dallin H. Oaks asked me in the interview for the state presidency. And he asked me, I think I was in the interview with my wife at that time. He asked me, he also asked this as the new state presidency as well. He asked me, how do I want to be remembered? And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, in life in general. He said, yeah, but also this calling. How do you want to be remembered? And how do you want to be remembered in this life? And that question really hit me, Jim, very directly. And I want to be remembered for doing the right thing, having integrity, helping others, and not being quiet when we should stand up and speak up and say something. And so I put a lot of, I'm an individual. The church has got way more resources than I've got. It's got more influence than I've got. And it has a moral and spiritual obligation to say something, to do something, to step up, to speak up, and to act, and to hold governments and politicians to account on moral issues. Otherwise, what are we as a church? And so I would throw that question back at church from President Oaks. How do you want to be known? How do you want to be remembered? That would be my my closing thoughts.
All right. Well, thank you all. We were told Medique Design said this is the best podcast ever.
Thank you.
We very much appreciate that. Thank you both so much for your words tonight. We'll be chiming in next time. Well, we very look forward to meeting with you next time. And we will be releasing another episode of the audio podcast this Saturday. It's going to be a really great one. Sandra Tanner sat down with us, and we had just Ian, you said that was your favorite one we've ever done.
Yeah, I mean, oh my goodness, we've had so many amazing people on, as our listeners will know. I mean, oh boy, Richard Bushman, Greg Prince. I just love Greg Prince. We've had Terrell Givens on. We've had a mission president, Darrell Watson's been on. We had Jordan, humanitarian lead for the church. There's so many. For me, Sandra Tanner, and if you're listening, Sandra, I absolutely adore you. You're just one of the most extraordinary individuals. It's right up there. It's probably been my favorite, or one of the favorites for sure. I can't wait for people to listen to that. It's going to be amazing.
All right. So with that, yes, look, Clayton Settle says, what? Oh, wow, that's going to be lit. It is lit. You're going to enjoy it.
Sandra does not pull any punches.
She does not pull any punches. We told her at the end, you're a legend, you're a rock star. And she absolutely is. All right. Yep. She's the GOAT, says Peter Higgs. And met Sandra at her bookstore. She's just wonderful. All right. So with that, we thank you all very much for joining us, and we look forward to talking with you again in our next live stream. And thank you very much for supporting Inside.